Welcome to the ChurchCandy podcast. Today, I'm sitting down with Ruslan and his pastor from Rhythm Church, Pastor Jeff Moore. Gentlemen, thank you guys for coming all the way out to Houston.
Heck yeah, dude.
Yeah, super pumped
Stoked to be here. Yeah.
Man, that's one thing about Oceanside, SoCal. The weather just sucks. Specifically compared here to Houston, man. Isn't it just great here?
Oh my gosh. Like I always, whenever I'm like in Houston or anywhere like that and I come out of the airport, I'm just like, goosh.
Yeah.
You get hit
the
with
moment
like
you get
wall
off
of
the airplane.
thick air.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
You definitely feel it when you're here.
Yeah.
And so, man, so cool. Thank you guys for coming out.
You bet.
We're super grateful for that. And so, Ruslan, man, how long have you guys been going to Rhythm?
We've been officially at Rhythm for almost 2 years. We've been going on and off since launch, since 2020. And I initially, we were living in San Marcos, and the church I was at was like 20, I've been there for 20 years. And it just felt weird driving past my old church to go to Rhythm. My wife initially wanted to go before the pandemic, and then the pandemic started, and I wanted to go. And it took us a couple years. And once we moved to Vista, we were like way closer to Rhythm, and just felt right to transition.
Yeah. Jeff, did you know who Ruslan was? Like beforehand, what was y'all's relationship like then?
The first time he walked through our doors, I was like, oh my gosh, it's Ruslan. And I ran over I had him sign my Bible. It was great. And I basically do whatever I can to be around him. No, we've known each other for like 14, 15 years now.
Yeah. Yep.
We originally met. So I was doing a ministry called Think International with Sean Cannell.
Mhm.
Shout out to Sean. And we were on what we called our creative leadership tour. And part of that was just connecting with creatives in the church at that time. And we had actually heard some of Rue's music back in the day with the breaks.
Mhm.
And with a video that was shot by Sam Wells on the pier
That's right.
before I even moved down to Oceanside. And so when we came down there and stuff, we got to meet with Rue. And so we just talked. It's actually funny. You can
It's
find
still
it.
up.
It's still up.
Yeah.
You can find it. He looks like a kid,
Yeah.
and so do I. But yeah, so we've known each other for we've known each other for a long time. And then King's Dream and all these, like the whole thing. I've just watched it all unfold for the past decade or so.
Yeah.
They would come and play at the young adult ministry I led, and so that was fun. That was cool. They'd play these hip hop concerts with 600-700 young adults. Just stoked.
That's so cool. And so with Ruslan transitioning from, music to now, what would you describe yourself as? Christian influencer, YouTuber? What do you tell people when they ask what you do?
Titles. Renaissance man. No, I YouTube podcast.
Yeah. So with Ruslan doing what he does and his audience are Christians, what's it like? What is it like pastoring, an influencer?
It's interesting. We actually have a few influencers at our church. Rue's like the Christian one, but we've got other ones and whatnot. And honestly, it's just like pastoring anybody else to a point, meaning like, there's no preference given, but at the same time, like I just love Rue. So we hang out, like we're friends, we're going to chop it up or we travel together and stuff. And, but as far as anything else goes, I mean, it's just like pastoring anybody else really, except for, let me say this. So on one of the families that go to our church, like we'll do a private baptism for them, but I'll also do a private baptism for anybody. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
But their particular bin is if we do it around everyone, there's going to be, a gaggle of people that are going to bring out their phones, film it, not for excitement of they're getting baptized, but for like, post it on TikTok or whatever it might be. And so, so there are those little like caveats, like specialties, but again, we do it for anybody. I don't know if that makes sense. Makes sense? Yeah.
No, that's fair.
Yeah.
That's fair. Do you ever have people that come up to you at church and are like, "Oh, hey, man, love your work, man. Can we take a picture?" Or like, what's that like?
Yeah. About every Sunday.
Bro, we've had people email our church, "Hey, what service does Ruslan go to?"
Yeah.
So what service is it? Go ahead and tell it.
No, I'm pretty easily accessible.
Yeah.
I think at some point that might become a security risk for the church and for myself, because people know I'm home every Sunday, and I'm at Rhythm Church every Sunday. So I think sometimes the inside the sanctuary feels weird. Like if we're inside the sanctuary,
Yeah.
and like service just wrapped, that feels a little weird.
Yeah.
I've taken pictures inside the sanctuary before, but usually outside, like we're mingling, hanging out. A lot of people will come up.
But culturally, you guys are already out. That's like that would almost be like the lobby for other churches, right?
Yes,
Oh,
like
for
out
sure.
front.
Yeah, out front.
Yeah, we have like
courtyard
a
area.
really cool courtyard area, and where everyone's usually the previous service comes early. They're hanging. The service that just gets out, everyone's hanging. So you're seeing people. So that's different. But like inside the sanctuary, it's a little weird.
My Texas mind is trying to comprehend. Why would you want to be outside in that? Like,
Because we're a 5-minute walk from the beach.
Yeah, because
No,
you get
yeah.
that ocean breeze right in our front yard.
Mhm.
The
No.
church, yeah.
Yeah, no, that's super
Yeah.
fair. That's super fair.
Yeah.
Man, so a lot of Ruslan's content is, it's about pastors. It's about
Sure.
people in ministry. What's it like being a pastor and watching someone in your church make all this content about pastors, about your peers,
pastors, about church and stuff. Honestly, I feel like what Rue does now is really, it's kind of like, it's just great Christian commentary, Earlier, some of the videos were a little gnarly, on some stuff, but at the same time, some of it did need to be called out, I think, in some of our peers. But ultimately, I love the content. I don't watch all of it, so I don't know if someone's
I would be very impressed if you watched.
Yeah, I didn't watch all of it. He's a content producing machine. Their whole setup and stuff is wild. But there's only been like a few times I've been like, hey man, I don't know if I would have done that, or I don't know if I would have said that, or whatnot.
And if something is dicey, I remember one particular video recently I sent you, and I was like, hey, I don't know about this one, and you were like, don't put that out, and I was like, all right,
yeah.
It's one of those things like, all right, my wife tells me all the time, hey, if you have to ask if you should respond to that comment in that way, or if you need to ask if you should do that,
probably shouldn't do it.
Probably shouldn't.
Probably just a no.
No.
Probably just a no.
No, but I think like he's got a really great take, really good. He's got sound doctrine, good theology, and so with that, there's not really a lot that I watch and go, oh, what's going on?
Yeah.
And honestly, like very rarely do I get any kind of like, most of the time when people know that Rue goes to our church, and I have other pastor friends and stuff, I've never had anyone, like, oh my gosh, like what that guy says, I can't believe it. Well, that's horrible.
Yeah.
Everyone's actually really impressed for the most part across the board with what comes out.
We've also made a hard pivot, I'd say about 2.5, 3 years ago, where we said, hey, we're doing net positive content most of the time. By net positive, we mean we're saying something positive and or adding value in some way, shape, or form. So if people are looking at anything post 2023, they're going to hear me say generally positive things about pastors and churches, even our peers. So like if I'm reacting to Josh Howerton, it's going to be, hey, Josh Howerton did this, and this, and he said this, and this is amazing.
Right.
This is great. Right. I'm not going to like roast the whatever video where he copied an apology or, that's like some of that. So like Bryce Crawford copied Judas. Like I'm not doing a reaction on Bryce Crawford copying Judas Smith's sermon. Now, when Bryce Crawford came on my channel, we talked about that and he was very gracious, and so same thing with Josh. Like I'm sure that would come up in a podcast. The One in FI podcast, we did a podcast with him. That kind of stuff, because people want to know. The worst thing you could do as a creator is to know what your audience wants and not give it to them.
Right.
People want to know, what do you think about this thing? And so we got to have the conversations, but we've made it a point to not have the conversations in a negative way, in a way that is putting a bad taste in people's mouth about the church. Because the ultimate win for us is to get people into a local church.
Yeah.
That's the W.
To build the church. Build the kingdom for sure.
Yeah, no, it's
100%.
Huge. Yeah, I'm right there with you guys on that. On that same note, I love that your content now is net positive.
Mm-hmm.
It tries to paint the church in a positive light. With that, though, there's still times where pastors drop the ball, whether it's moral failures or financial things. And you'll still make videos about that. I watch them. I'm interested. It's like, hey, what's going on?
Yeah.
Do you feel like highlighting these pastors that step down and transition out of ministry or that are going through controversy? Do you think that like is a net positive for the church? Like, what are your thoughts on that?
That's a great question. Can you give me a specific example of what comes to mind of like a negative pastor?
Well, recently, like Todd White he had who was it? Mike
Winger. Yep.
Yes.
Yep.
Mike Winger did the expose on Todd White. You reacted to it. I remember Todd White would like speak at the Bible college that I went to. So I was like, oh, this is interesting. Like
what Bible college did you go to?
I went to CFNI, Christ for the Nations Institute in Dallas.
Okay. That's
great. CFNI guy. Yeah. So I just find that interesting. Like, oh, what's going on? And so where do you draw the line on what's going to paint the church in a positive light versus, hey, people were already talking about this. People want to know my thoughts on it, and I've got to react to it.
Well, first of all, I don't got to react to anything, so I don't have to. And there's a lot of stuff we don't talk about because we're, maybe waiting for something to pan out with an investigation and that sort of stuff. With that video in particular, I'd say the line is, can we all look at this and go, hey, this is generally harmful to the body of Christ? This is generally harmful. So telling people like, I haven't lied in a decade. I haven't thought a lustful thought in a decade. I did a 40-day water fast and you're plumped up in the face and jacked. I think it's generally harmful to the body of Christ. Like I think what Todd White did in those clips is harmful. I think saying that Jesus became porn is harmful. And so that's where I would draw the line. So if someone's saying stuff that I just genuinely go, ooh, that's just bad. Like this is dark stuff. That, as I say there, and then the other line I would draw is like when they're coming after my friends. Like when people are coming after my friends, sometimes it's actually defending my friends who are getting called out. So like Mike Signorelli is a friend of ours. We went to Israel with him. And for every time that I'm defending a Mike Winger who's making a Todd White video, people don't, they do. Me defending a Mike Signorelli, who I think oftentimes gets unfairly treated by some of that same community of, I would say, discernment ministry type stuff. Yes, I would say the line is like, man, I think it is so unhelpful to tell people stuff like you can do a 40-day water fast. Like it's literally dangerous telling people that. And so that's where I would draw the line. So I can think of other examples, but that would be like the line for me. And that's why like some of this stuff is not as relevant. Like I don't care with what Mike Todd is doing because I don't think he's like directly bringing harm. Some people can argue his theology is harmful, but I don't think he's directly bringing harm. So like with our new celebrity pastor, making church shenanigans, but we could only say nice things. Like we're intentionally trying to just say nice things and compliment.
I did watch that video.
Yeah, you did watch that one?
I watched that one. Yeah.
So like it's tongue in cheek. But I'm not dunking on him. There's a lot of negative things I could say, and I don't. And so it's like literally like, hey, let's give the most charitable version of something that people are going to find an issue with, and let's try to see it in a positive light. And that's not me trolling. Like I'm not trolling. I've reached out to Mike Todd multiple times. I would love to have a conversation. I would argue that it would be in celebrity pastors' best interest to sit down and have the uncomfortable conversations because we're that veil of like status and power that's done in this era. It's over with. Like you don't get to hide behind your platform and status and power anymore. Yeah. So I think it's in their best interest to sit down and have the conversations. How many of them will? I think the smart ones are. Like I think the Josh Howertons are leaning into the tension of this new era we're in. But I think a lot of the guys, they're still kind of, they're in the industrial mindset of church from 5-10 years ago, and they don't want to have those conversations. I think that's a disservice to them and to their audience and the broader body of Christ.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Whenever everything came out about Robert Morris at Gateway, our church literally the Sunday before had started a new series, The Blessed Life. And that Sunday we'd given everyone a copy. We gave out the books. And my pastor made a big deal because he didn't want to be accused of, oh, he just stole this from
plagiarizing,
especially because we're also in Texas, right? And then that was Sunday. It was like that week the news came out. I remember texting him. He's like, "Yeah, I'm probably not going to say his name from the stage anymore." And like, because I know some churches, like the church I grew up in, like Wednesday night services, like 1 month out of the year, we would play just Pastor Robert Morris's sermons. So with all of that, and I'd love to get kind of both of y'all's take on it. How or do you think should like local pastors respond whenever there are big things like that happen, whether pastors fall or they're in the zeitgeist or they're getting some negative heat in the world?
Oh, that's a great question. What do you think?
Well, I mean, I would say, from like the global perspective, and if you have a global platform and people respect your voice, like Ruslan and other people like that, I think for sure say something, 100%, especially when it's that blatant of, everything comes out, pastors arrested, all of that. That's huge. But I would say, though, coming from from the West Coast and that West Coast perspective, a lot of people don't know who Robert Morris is.
Mm-hmm.
They have no clue. Maybe they saw something on a reel or something at some point, but like our culture where we're from celebrity pastors don't really exist. Like you have to be like deep Christian, been around for a long time and really love Christian culture and content to like know. Like if I announced to our church that so and so pastor is coming to speak next week, they'd be like, "Oh, you're not speaking? Maybe we'll go to the beach instead."
Yeah.
Like that's quite honestly,
That's a
like
fact.
that's the way that it is. I mean, we do revival nights because I'm trying to get our church like used to guest speakers and stuff. And like they don't come because so-and-so is speaking that night unless they've heard him before somewhere or something and they really like him.
They would have to be really deep in the core
They'd
of our
have to be,
leadership
exactly.
and like really immersed in church culture to know who any of even our guest speakers are.
Yeah. So from a pulpit standpoint, I'm not going to stand up and be like, "I'm sure you guys have all heard about Robert Morris." They'd be like, "Who's that guy?" Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Would you do it though in like because like at his church there was someone that was kind of relational, well, not relationally, content wise connected.
For sure.
Well, we were literally preaching the Blessed Life series.
Yeah.
The first week of the series, we were like, "Hey, like there's a book that Robert Morris wrote.
Yeah.
Here's the book.
Yep.
Right.
This is kind of what the series is based off of."
Yeah,
and like
exactly. No, at that point you have to say something.
Yeah.
You for sure you stand up and you say, "Hey, look, this is what's going on."
Yeah.
And then I would probably hard pivot. It would be too hard for people's minds to like go, "Well, we're still reading his book." It would just, I think the controversy it would cause is not worth like dying on that mountain or dying on that hill.
Mm-hmm.
But when it comes to the content though, like I still think like The Blessed Life is a great book, and I think, we're in this cancel culture today of like, now we just have to wipe everything off the shelves and do everything,
Mm-hmm.
which I understand. And again, like what Robert Morris did was horrific, but the book is good. It's a good book. It's got a lot of great principles and stuff in it.
I've never heard of the book, so I can't speak to the book. But I think sometimes, and to your point, that cancel culture reverts people back to an all or nothing mentality,
Right.
And then everything they did is invalid and discontinued forever. And it's like, no, someone can have a massive mistake, error, sin, and yet have been used by God, and their content itself isn't forever
Exactly
destroyed and canceled.
I mean, because if we did that, we have to go back all through like the church fathers and a lot of these, like, a lot of our people that we've pulled on for years, and like, A.W. Tozer, like terrible husband. We'd go, he treated his wife poorly. Let's never read Pursuit of God again. Like there's just, or,
Martin Luther. Martin Luther
yeah.
said some wild stuff about
Yeah,
the Jews.
bro.
Like really dark stuff that some have even argued that it went on to influence Hitler.
Yeah.
And the Germans during the night. And this is like the guy, the Protestant
exactly.
Reformation guy.
Yep.
He said some wild stuff about Jewish people. So what do you do with that? How do you reconcile that?
Right. Exactly.
I think in the same tone, we're not like, man, I just don't like, sure only like Psalms because that whole Bathsheba thing.
I know,
David
right?
did.
Yeah. I don't listen to the Psalms anymore because of David. Like, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
No, that's fair.
Yeah.
Why do you think like, controversy gets clicks? Like, why do you think people just love the gossip and love that? Like, because that's,
If it bleeds, it leads.
If it bleeds, it leads. That's the human condition, man.
Yep.
The human condition has always been. I mean, you could argue that it made it into the scriptures.
Right.
Whoever was putting these things together didn't have to put in the chapters of David and Bathsheba.
Mm-hmm.
That could have been edited out, if they wanted to. So yeah, I think there's conflict and tension always gets people intrigued. That's any good story has conflict and tension. And a YouTube video, an article, a book, it's still the same thing as telling a story. And so if you're just not telling any stories with any conflict and tension, you're not telling great stories.
Right.
And there's anchoring points that people are relating to because there's names that people are familiar with.
I think like too, people love to see other people fail.
Yeah.
Like it's almost honestly like our brains are hardwired towards critique and being critical. Like it's much easier for us to criticize than it is for us to compliment. It's easier for us. I mean, even the way that you think about this, like it takes like 6 or 7 encouraging things that you hear before you even let go of the one negative thing that you've heard. Like you'll like how many comments on like a post is like, love you, bro, so good. And then there's that one that says, you're a fake, you're an idiot. And you're like, you focus on that one.
And you reply to that
and
one.
you reply to that one. And like, that's what we do all the time. So then when we see somebody fail, I've heard it called failure porn. People love it. And they dig into it, and that's why they want to make the videos about the celebrity pastors, or they make that like they just want to like bring people down, because when you bring people down, it makes you feel better about yourself. So as opposed to being like really kingdom centric and kingdom minded, and sometimes just staying out of some of that stuff, you want to lean into it. You want to hear it. Like with the Mark Driscoll podcast, like popped off. It's crazy. Every pastor's that rise and fall, and then all of a sudden people start to take that and they start projecting it on their pastors, and they start doing all this. And it's I don't know. I don't think it's healthy.
I think there's also a layer of it where someone could legitimately have a pretty big impact on you in a positive way, and then they do something that it maybe is a failure, maybe is unwise, and you're trying to process it. And so there can be videos or a podcast that can help you process it. And so I think there's also that component. Now, I don't know where that line is between like, this is cathartic and it's helping me think through this, versus, hey, we're just going to do this thing and meticulously pick apart every single thing this dude's ever did wrong. And, I think some of that Driscoll pod was unfair.
Right.
I think a lot of it was unfair. And so I reached out to Mark and his people and was like, hey, like, you should respond to this. You should really respond to this. And for whatever reason, he decided not to directly respond to it. But I think there's always value in hearing the other side of the story in a situation like that, because it wasn't direct, overt disqualification with him. There's some of the power stuff I guess you can argue, right? I don't remember all the particulars. I'm trying to like go back in my brain right now, but I think there could have been hey, like, this is what happened in this conversation. This is how, this is where I did fall short. This is where I could have done better. This is where I sinned. Again, those things I think are advantageous for leaders to lean into, because then you just have one narrative and it's this amazing podcast, and it does taint people's perspective of the church as a whole.
Yep.
Yeah. So on a different note, there has been an incredible shift in American culture. Bible sales are at an all-time high. Young men going to church more now than ever. And with that there's been a big rise in the ortho bros, in a coming to Orthodox Christianity. So obviously, Ruslan, the three of us are Protestant, and I know this is like a lot of the content that you'll talk through too. So having your pastor here, I would love to get y'all's thoughts on, what can pastors do in a time like this to take advantage of, hey, there's a shift in culture right now. How can we get people coming into our church and not necessarily Greek Orthodox? Or at the same point, you can make the argument of, okay, they go too far down that path and now they're red pill bros.
That's a great question. I think what we've been doing well at Rhythm is calling people to more and not less. That seeker-friendly movement, like, church is Disneyland. I just came from Disneyland. Disneyland's great. Okay. But like, where everything is there to make you feel upbeat and good and encouraged. And that's like, yes, God used that. And yes, I even came to faith through that door. I didn't have to work out the theology and the apologetics on my own, but I did come through the faith through that door. And I think one of the things we're doing well at Rhythm is calling people to something greater, transcendent and higher, so that when they start flirting with orthodoxy, it's not they're not their whole worldview isn't shaken, because there's a standard and it's higher and it's more and it's not less, and it's not, we're going to lower the on-ramp and make it as easy as possible for you. No, we're going to tell you straight up, like, you need to stop. You do a good job of like openly calling out sin from the pulpit, and then openly communicating what does a Christian life look like from the pulpit?
Yeah.
And I think you got to have those two, because if you're not calling out sin, and if you're not calling men to something higher, then they just naturally are gonna want that. In my opinion, this is not to go back, but this is why I think Driscoll did well, right? I think Driscoll nailed this in a time where everything was fluffy, and I think you do that really well. And I think that's why at Rhythm we see so many men that are engaged, but not just engaged, men that I talk to after young adults group that are flirting with these questions, but they're not joining these churches. They're wrestling through these things. They're wrestling through church history, apostolic succession. What does that stuff look like? So I don't know if you want to speak into that.
Yeah, for sure. I think one of the things that is attractive about like the Orthodox Church is how much emphasis and focus is put on the holiness of God.
Mm-hmm.
And that at times it makes him almost untouchable, right? But I think for too long, what we've done as the church, especially if you go through like the positive worldview of evangelicalism to the neutral worldview to now the negative worldview, is in that neutral world is that we made Jesus our homeboy. And we made him our friend, and we had so much of our Christianity was about us. And that's why we have so many people that have deconstructed and so many people that have like walked away, is because it was a very me-centric faith. Or they can believe, they can be a fully practicing LGBTQ community person but still be a Christian. Does it make sense? Because Jesus wouldn't want me to suffer. The Lord wouldn't want me to have to like deny myself, which is the total gospel. And so I think what we can do as, I guess, the Protestant church in this time is just teach the Bible.
Yeah.
Get back to preaching the word of God.
Yeah.
And like, let's write worship music about him, not about how he loves me and looks at me and is all googly over me. Like, no, let's get back to, he's a holy God. There's the grace of God, but there's also the fear of God that we need to get back to. And I think that's it's been, a lot of it has been lost in the church in the last 20 years, I think. And because we've made it gimmicky, we've made church games and gimmicks as opposed to we're worshiping the Lord.
That's good.
Yeah. On another note, have you guys ever seen the TV show Righteous Gemstones?
No.
Yeah.
Yeah?
I have.
Do you know what it is?
No.
Okay.
Yeah, you haven't seen that?
I don't think so.
Oh, yeah.
Dude, this is... I can't believe I get to explain what Righteous Gemstones is to Ruslan. So it's a Danny McBride TV show.
Okay.
And it's about megachurches.
Okay.
And it's about this pastoral family. John Goodman was like the founding pastor of this church. And it takes elements from these megachurch pastors, televangelists over the last 30, 40 years or so, and makes it hyperbolic. They don't make fun of God. They don't make fun of like the bride of Christ as much as it is just mega church culture.
It looks good. I just
they make fun. They're basically making fun of like church families in the green room, basically like the green room of church.
Yes.
Yeah.
We don't have a green room.
We don't have a green room.
You got a really tiny office.
Got a tiny office.
Yeah. I've always wondered, like, do pastors watch the show? Because I watch it and I almost feel bad watching it. Because
do you watch it? Or is
I've watched it, yeah.
You've watched it?
I've watched it and I'll watch it. I'll tune back into it. Like, we didn't have Max for a long time. HBO Max is what it's on.
Yeah.
And so, like, I just didn't watch it. I've got Max recently. And so I popped on and watched a couple episodes.
What do you...
It's pretty vulgar for sure. But I think, honestly, like, it's the word hyperbolic, like where you go from...
dramatic.
It's really dramatic on a lot of that stuff. But I think... there's always a little bit of truth in it, which is funny, right? Of like a lot of these guys are untouchable, or you're putting your son in line to take over the church when your son really shouldn't take over the church. In that show, like he does that. He puts his son into the church, like no, so it's that I've never been in a green room or in somebody's backstage where people talk like that or are like that. Thank the Lord.
Are they like cussing? Like what is?
Yeah.
So they're kind of wild.
They're a little wild.
Okay,
gotcha.
Gotcha.
They're a little wild.
They're wild. So like
that's and I'll just add to that. I've been in a lot of green rooms with a lot of pastors and a lot of entertainers. Name them. I've been in the green room with
Yeah.
them, right? With the exception of like the big dogs, like the Joel Osteen. I don't know those guys.
Sure.
But I've never. I mean, I think I one time there's a pastor we know that like said the A word in front of me, and like that's it, or maybe said damn or something. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah. I will say nah. I think those things probably exist, but I've never been in a room where they're just letting it rip like that. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the premise, I'm going to spoil some things in the first
Sure.
episode. The premise of the first season is the lead pastor's son and his friends like go out partying, drugs, prostitutes. Do you like?
Yeah,
Is it
remember
you
that,
remembering it now?
I remember it now. Yeah.
Well, someone was recording it, and then it was like blackmail, and it was like, hey, you have to give us $1 million or whatever the amount was, or we're gonna leak this video of the pastor's son. So I mean, then it's you have Danny McBride and like his gang of friends trying to stop it. And so there's like comedy elements of it that are hilarious. But I honestly I think every pastor should watch this because yes, on one side, Bible sales an all-time high. People coming to the church now more than like I don't want to say than ever, but like than in a long to my lifetime for sure. You still have the other side of culture. It's like, oh, cool. This is what people are being fed to what church looks like and church culture looks like. And so I think that's something that like every pastor should watch. One, it's a funny show. I'm gonna admit it. It's hilarious.
Yeah.
They say bad words. Get what is it, VidAngel, where it like takes out all the bad words whenever you want to watch a show. Get that if that's a conviction of yours. But I think it really gives a lot of insight to what people think mega churches are really like.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, that don't know. I mean, yeah, they meet in an arena. It's very.
They meet in an arena.
Yeah, the church is in this giant arena. Yeah.
Well, the stage and the setup looks very similar to like Lakewood.
Oh, that's
like
funny.
I think there's like a globe in the back that rotates. There's a scene where like when Jim Bakker was going to build his like Disney World for Christians. There's like a plot line where they're going to open their own like resort, but it's just for Christians and all of that. So they really like cherry pick little things from church culture.
Yeah.
And
especially the 80s portion of church culture for sure. Yeah.
Yes.
That's so interesting. Yeah, you know, the thing I had to reconcile at one point was that when you get into the deeper ethos of like Christian YouTube and some of this stuff, but then you actually go and meet pastors. And I would meet dozens, probably hundreds of pastors at this point. And I don't meet nasty, mean pastors. Like generally, most pastors are good dudes.
Yeah.
And they're just doing their best. Even in their failures, they're trying to figure it out. And I think that's the part is like, yes, that there's an element where culture can distort these things and make it unhelpful.
Sure.
You know, and so I end up having a lot of these conversations behind the scenes on both ends of like pastors that like, oh, that wasn't helpful. You shouldn't have said that way.
Right.
Right. I just had a whole in our group text, you know, with some other friends. And then it's like on the other end, like, hey, you're being a bit too critical. Not all churches are like this. Not all mega church pastors are like this. The vast majority of them aren't stealing and driving Rolls Royces.
Right.
Like, and so it's like there's a tension there that I think people get to wrestle through.
Yeah.
You know?
I was going to say, I mean, there was a whole era though where pastors did put themselves on a pedestal, or people put them on a pedestal and they liked it. They wouldn't talk about their failures; they only talked about their successes. And I think that we've seen now more of a wave of pastors who are a little bit more authentic. Will talk about their hurts, their what's going on in their lives. You know, I don't think it's good to bleed on your congregation, but I think it's good to show them your scars, you know, or show them where you're cut or where you're healing even. But there was a whole era where he didn't. And so that's why, you know, people thought of them as like movie stars or whatnot. And a lot of them were jerks in that era. But like, to your point, I've met a lot of like, been in the green room and met a lot of people. They're just regular guys. They're just rad people. I've met and talked with Joel Osteen, one of the nicest guys in the world. Like that smile on stage is real. Like, you know, behind the scenes, like he's a legit guy. Like just asking about my family and like, who am I? Like he doesn't have to talk to me. You know, I'm just a Oceanside pastor. You know, like, but most of the people that are like pastoring or kind of well known today are nothing like the righteous Gemstone people. But I get it.
Funny story about Joel. Obviously, we both live here in Houston, and it was
that's right. He's
we're here down the road.
I should have tapped in with Joel, man.
Dude, should've texted
You should be
him.
you should be on the other side of the table right now.
Which is
Yeah.
crazy because it's just like now when people think of Joel Osteen in Houston, they think of like Hurricane Harvey in 2017.
Oh, yeah,
It's like,
yeah.
lock the door.
Yeah,
And,
yeah.
But I ran into him at a Texans game, and whenever I stopped and was like, hey man, like, and introduced myself, and I tell him what we do at ChurchCandy's, and the biggest smile, so nice. Man, I've heard of you guys.
Aw.
Y'all are doing the Lord's work.
Right, yeah.
And I think he was lying through his teeth. I don't think he'd ever heard of us. I don't think he knew what ChurchCandy was.
He probably did, dude. No, I bet you he did.
Maybe. We'll see. We'll never know. But I just thought it was crazy that, like, man, he didn't have to say that. Like,
Right.
he was just so kind. We've got a picture. I don't post it because he's a very controversial figure. And I just, gotta.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
I hear that about Joel all the time.
Yeah.
I hear that he's one of the sweetest guys. That's a guy that, like, I really believe would benefit. Like, if he leaned into the tension in a long form 3-hour conversation with a Mike Winger, who hasn't called him a wolf in sheep's clothing. He hasn't called him a demon. He hasn't said any of those things.
Mhm.
I think those two sitting down for 3, like, I think that would be good for both sides of that tension in there. And I think Joel would handle it really well. I think he had some rough moments, like with mainstream, like produced media, like Larry King Live,
for
trying
sure.
to communicate in sound bites, you
Yeah.
know, and some stuff that he said publicly and then walked back. But I think, like, I don't know, I think a guy like that would benefit from sitting down and having a good faith conversation in long form like that. I think the kingdom would benefit.
So actually, Joel did sit down. I don't know if it was recorded or if it's public online or if anyone can find it, but he sat down at an ARC conference, like the Association of Related Churches,
Mhm.
like several years ago, and like talked through like what it's like being a celebrity, like someone that is there, and like how God keeps him humble and how all of that. And so that does exist somewhere. If you find it, put it in the comments below, because I would love to watch it. I haven't looked for it, so
Yeah.
maybe it's easily accessible. But no, so he has done long form content like that, but I don't know if it was necessarily in like a podcast setting. It was more of like a church conference. They interviewed him like that.
It probably wasn't. It was probably more about like how, like his life and whatnot. Probably wasn't more from a theological bent, was it?
No, I don't think so.
'Cause I think that's a Winger thing would
Yeah.
get theological and stuff.
Yeah.
Because everyone's big hang up with Joel or people like that is like they're not preaching the real gospel, or like people aren't really getting saved in his church because he's not preaching the real gospel. And I'm like, well, I mean, it's
Top of the
pretty
funnel.
basic. Like it's a basic gospel. People are getting saved.
Yeah.
But they even know that, like the behind the scenes of their church, they know they're not like they're not the church that people are going to go real deep in. They know that.
Yeah, I think the critique would be the omission of aspects of sin, repentance, hell.
Gotcha.
So it's like Kanye preached more about sin, hell, and repentance when he was at Lakewood than Joel ever has. That's kind of a problem.
Yeah.
Right. And so I think it's the omission of said things, and then I think it's also the handling of certain passages of scripture.
Sure. Yeah.
What made all of that worse, though, is then trying to silence Mike Winger by using the YouTube system.
Oh, that's right.
And then
That's
YouTube
I
citing
forgot about
Mike
that
Winger,
part.
which has never happened before.
Yeah.
We've caught bogus copyright issues before, but for YouTube to be like, yeah, nah, So I think that was the gripe. It's like going after Christian YouTubers. And I don't think Joel is doing it, for the record. I hope it's not
It's
Joel
not
himself.
Joel. No.
I hope it's someone on his team, some overzealous intern that's like, we're going to show this Mike Winger guy.
Yeah. If
Yeah.
you saw Joel on the streets and like called him out on it,
Yeah.
he would be like, I'm sorry, brother. I don't even really know what
Yeah.
most of those words mean.
Yeah.
Yeah, he tried to, but Mike has tried to talk to him. Mike Winger has tried to talk to him multiple times, reached out multiple times. And then I think he should. I think they should have a good talk. I think they have a good talk.
But hold on a second. I want to play or push back devil's advocate or whatever
Sure.
within that.
But really quick, before we jump into that, pastors, I'm going to ask you a question. Can your church handle more new guests? If that answer is yes, then I want to tell you about ChurchCandy. See, at ChurchCandy, we help churches get more new guests on Sundays by running their Facebook and Instagram ads, inviting their city to church. We are on a mission to connect 1 million people to a local church, and so far, we have already connected over 250,000 people to churches all across the country, and we would love to send people to your church as well. Imagine all the people that drive by your church every single day that want to grow in their relationship with the Lord, that want to be plugged into a life-giving church community, but they have no idea that your church exists. We want to get them connected to your ministry, so go to churchcandy.com or hit the link below in the description. I'll also pin it in the very first comment so you can schedule a call with the ChurchCandy team, learn more, and see if we would be a good fit to work together. Now, back to the podcast.
Like, from the standpoint of like, it might help a certain audience, but when you are Joel Osteen and you're writing books and you are, running a church of I don't know how big it is. I mean, it meets in an arena. Like, for his time, for what he does, all that stuff, would it be beneficial for him? Or you know what I'm saying? Like, for as busy as he is and what he does, for him to go, you know what, I'm going to sit down and talk with this guy who radically criticized me, and give him my valuable hours.
I think it would be beneficial for the kingdom, which would be beneficial for him.
Yeah, right.
I think that would be and I think it would show a lot about his humility to like, okay, now I'm going to position myself and be vulnerable with someone that has been critical and engage with their critique and if it was reasonable or not. And I say all that with the caveat that Mike Winger never attacked him personally. He never made fun of him. Okay. He never said he was a wolf in sheep's clothing. He never said he wasn't saved. He didn't say people weren't getting saved at his church. I think that's a pretty strong distinction.
Sure.
Because most of the other kind of critique about him is like, he's a wolf. He's leading people straight to hell. And I think that someone like Winger, I think, kind of is different in that sense.
I got you.
Yeah.
I mean, and to be fair, I don't really listen to Joel, so I don't really know what he.
I haven't listened to Joel outside of the Winger reaction. I haven't listened to a Joel Osteen. Yeah. I will say this, and it's going to give me a hot water. When I went through my Calvinist phase, and I would listen to Paul Washer, I would be so depressed. I'd have to throw on some Joel Osteen to counterbalance it. That was about 15 years ago. About 14 years ago, because that stuff was so heavy, all the Calvinism reform stuff, that I had to just throw on something up. I was like, what is encouraging? Joel Osteen, let me see what he's talking about. And I mean, like, oh, this is balance,
Yeah.
And listen, I needed both. I needed both at the time. I needed the fire and brimstone preaching, and then I needed something to lift me up as well. But I haven't listened to Joel in a really long time.
Yeah, I would have to imagine at Lakewood, that has to be their like top of funnel. Hey, people come in the door, they hear him preach, but then let's get them connected in a life group. And then let's get them in a discipleship class. Let's get them, get them in our pipeline to where that's whenever we're like, hey, yeah, all that's good, but also sin is sin, right?
Right, 100%.
I would assume that they have systems and things like that.
I would hope so. If I found out that like Lakewood had this banging theology and doctrine class with a great apologetics arm, and like, I'd be like, oh, that's fire. Who knows? I don't know.
Yeah.
So can I flip the script on you for a second and go, one, because of what you do with ChurchCandy, are there certain churches that you won't work with?
That's a great question.
Because of their doctrine or theology?
You pulling for that oneness Pentecostal?
Oh, bro. So, okay.
This is all of
good. So now I'm the one being interviewed. So I get this question a lot, and like my sister, she is way more spiritual, and like I think she's a bit better Christian than I. Like I love her to death. And she asks, like, so, like, would you work with a church like this or this? Or, like, if they have a pride flag flying outside their church? And with it, look, I don't ask for every single church when they sign up, hey, I need your statement of faith. I need your beliefs. I need this. Because I was struggling for a while. Like, all right, God, how do we decide, like, who we're going to work with? And I basically got a piece from the Lord, like, hey, that's not my place. Like, as long as they're preaching Jesus. Now, to be fair, if their Facebook profile logo has like a pride flag on it, we'll just tell people straight up, like, hey, we're probably not gonna be a good fit. Like, and first off, we've had people slip through the cracks, And then I get nervous, like, okay, if I refund their money and cancel their account, am I going to get sued for like, discrimination or whatever? So now, because we're not a church, I'm not a nonprofit, I'm not protected by
you don't have you don't have bylaws that say you don't have to work with.
So now I'm like, oh,
wow.
What do we do? Because we've like there was this Methodist church that was working with us. And I'm not going to be like, all right, we're not going to work with any Methodist church because they had that split because of the affirming stuff or whatever. There fell through the cracks, and the pastor and like the invite video that we were using in the ads, in which now I'm so removed from the company. I'm not in Facebook ads manager setting stuff up. We have team members. I'm meeting with my team members like, hey, I think you need to look at this account is what he told me. And I look, and in the video, he's wearing like a You Matter shirt, and it's like rainbow flags. And he's like, their ads are not performing well. This is the only content they gave us. And I just called the guy straight up. I was like, hey, man, I need you. I was like, look, you're affirming, whatever. Like, the ads aren't going to perform well because like the people that you're reaching with Facebook and Instagram ads on social media, it's not like atheists. It's not like these are people that they've already had seeds planted. Maybe they grew up in church and stepped away. Maybe they recently moved to an area. Like those are probably, and you might even be able to speak to this from the people that have visited Rhythm, like from ChurchCandy ads. They already have some level of like, yeah, I think at least agnostic, right? But whenever you're advertising and like that's the whole like, seeker church, and you go down that rabbit hole, then you can get all the way into affirming, pride flags, right? All the way on that side of the spectrum. The people that you would attract are turned off by that. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so to answer your question, are there churches that we won't work with? All of our sales team at ChurchCandy who are like talking to pastors before they sign up, I give them full authority to like say, hey, if you don't have a piece about this church, like do not sign them up. And they are all, Abraham is a youth pastor. Alex, he's an associate pastor at his church. Anna is the young adults life group leader at their church. Gabe has been like his dad's a pastor. He was student pastor for several years. Gotcha. So these are all people that are like spiritually mature and I trust. And the problem is their paycheck's tied to how many churches they signed up. Like it's and so like sometimes it's like, hey man, come on. He's like, I know. So yeah, that's kind of
it's a great answer.
Because that's something I've struggled with too. It's I like bet.
But you know what? I think the fact that you're struggling with it though is kind of an indication that you have a working service. The fact that you're wrestling with this shows that like ChurchCandy is necessary and good. And obviously like there's the benefit that we've had using it at Rhythm, but like practically like this is a service that can help churches a lot because you can get so targeted in getting people to your church service, with the whole system. So I think that's the fact that you're wrestling with it is like, oh, that means there's something. If it wasn't working, you wouldn't be wrestling with it.
Right.
You know?
It's like, I will take any church with a pulse on a credit card. Right. Come on.
Right.
Now, that's awesome. I mean, I think seeing our use of social media, which I think is fairly cutting edge, but then that packaged with our use of ChurchCandy, I think has shown really positive results for us. And now we're kind of looked at as like, oh, like Rhythm Church is the church to go check out for how they're using social, for how they're using Instagram. And that's in part in credit to what ChurchCandy has done.
Exactly. I mean, we have, like 1 in every 5 visitors that we get comes from social media. So whether that's organic reach or from like, ads, which a lot of people don't realize that ads are ads. Like
they've gotten better at making those ads not feel like
that's
ads.
One of our like things that we do. We don't want our ads to look like ads,
which is great. So we'll have people that will show up to our church, even non-believers, like maybe the agnostic type, but they're like, we just kept seeing this come across our feed. So we're like, we have to check this out.
Yeah. And that's something we're really intentional about. So like, you're on Amazon and you're looking at your microphone or whatever. And then you go to Instagram and you see an ad for that microphone. And you go to Facebook and it's like every time I turn around, I just keep seeing ads from this microphone, right? So it's just retargeting. And so you can do the same thing like for church. And so that's what we do is like anytime someone goes to Rhythm's website or everything you're doing organically on social media, we take that engagement And if they live within like driving distance of Rhythm, we're going to make sure that they're getting invited to church and they're seeing it to where every time they turn around. Like, I remember the first time I ever met someone at my church who said they found our church from social media. It was one of the Sundays when I was student pastor. I was preaching in big church. It was a big honor.
Big church.
It must have been like the Sunday after Easter or something, right? Yeah. And after church, this guy comes up to me and he goes, we're in Texas. So, Pastor Brady, man, I knew God was calling me here because every time I turn around on Instagram, I just kept seeing you. And I just go like, amen, brother. Like, I believe God was calling you.
God's using the algorithm. And some
I mean, like,
ads.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll argue like there's truth to that, right?
Sure,
like God can use whatever.
Yeah,
and
for
really,
sure.
we're just planting seeds and then Holy Spirit's working on them. And then they just keep seeing it over and over. And then Holy Spirit, there's a voice in their heads like, man, like God is calling you. And so
now
it's powerful.
I don't know. This is just a general question. Can ChurchCandy also incorporate what they've been searching for on other platforms? Because I'm not super deep in the weeds on that, but like, can you guys use that they're searching for a Bible and they're on Amazon looking for a Bible, and so it's like they may be a Jesus curious person, which is what I call them now, right? 45% of Gen Z is Jesus curious, not Christian Gen Z, like all of Gen Z is like 45 to 49%. So can your guys' service see their overall searching profile and say, hey, this person's looking for Jesus. They may not be a Christian, they may be a Christian, and because we can then send them an ad to a church.
Yeah. So yes and no. Yes, we can do that. We don't for most churches because we have to use third parties. We have to use third party like software and systems for that are like typically for like Fortune 500, like large companies that like the average church that we're working with, just it's not worth it for them to spend that when you can just do basic ads, inviting people to live within driving distance that have already either whether they're cold or more warm, like they've been to the website or not. Like you don't even need that. And still like most, I can turn on an ad today and a church is already getting new families like this coming Sunday.
That's crazy.
From how quickly it's going.
That's amazing.
How quickly things happen. Yeah. No, it's great.
Yeah.
Well, we've seen at our church in this last year, like a 49% jump in attendance.
Yeah. Year over year.
Yeah.
So what were the numbers last year?
Last year around this time, we're like 600, 700-ish and stuff. And right now we're like a little over 1,100 on a weekend.
That's almost double.
Yeah, it's almost double. It's crazy in a year. Yeah,
to almost double in a year.
Yeah.
And
in our little building. And and last year
bursting at the seams.
We're bursting at the seams because last year we were
smaller
full.
chairs.
Yeah, we did. We bought smaller chairs. We packed them. It's like wild. But yeah, I mean, it's and especially if you like we have 40 parking spaces around our building, so everything's like neighborhood parking.
Our neighbors love us.
Yeah, we do such good for the community. Actually, we do a lot of great for the community. They don't like us though, because we're loud, all that different stuff. So
parked in their spots.
Yeah, parked in their spots. Like everything that's happening at our church is an anomaly. I mean, we like, if you have a church right here in the middle, you get to pull from all of this, right? Our church is like right here. Like here's the water. We're not getting dolphins saved, and like right here, actually,
there's nowhere to drive to from an entire
from an entire side, and even honestly too, like north is Camp Pendleton, which is all Marine base, and so like we're drawing from like a little half circle, if that.
Yeah, so like a typical radius that a church would have here in Texas,
right?
You guys are only getting half of that,
or like a third of it, whatever. Yeah.
So you guys being in California, culturally, that's like way different than here in Texas. Like I've only had nightmares and heard about how terrible California is. Right. And I heard they tax you just when you land. It's like you get off the plane and you have to immediately pay more taxes just because it's evil and everything's terrible. I'm kidding. I was in San Diego last week. It was gorgeous.
It's amazing.
But what's it like pastoring in California? Just like culturally, I'm sure it's a lot different than here in Texas.
It's radically different. I was just on the phone with, I can't remember. It was a pastor friend of mine. We're just talking about the differences in our nation in general. Like you land in Texas, if it's a different country, or you go out like, East Coast, it's just different. Southern hospitality is real, all that stuff. And you get on the West Coast and it's a different world out there from the standpoint of, like super liberal. You get into not just politics, but just mindset in general. People are a lot more relaxed. Uh, the Christians out there, like, you come to church in Texas, people know that you're supposed to serve and give. You come to church in California and people are like, thanks for entertaining me, or that kind of was like the model for a long time. So pastoring there has been a trip.
Mm.
It's been pretty wild. That I think what we're seeing right now, because we are calling our church higher, is that people are responding to that call. And for a long time, people just were cool with it. Um, I pastored a large church there for a long time as a young adult and some other stuff. And, worship wasn't a priority. People show up 10, 15, 20 minutes into service just to get the word and then to bounce, so as far as worship as praise music goes, whatnot, that wasn't that big of a deal for a lot of people. But you really have to deal with a mindset of people give, man, we can go down a bunch of roads, like as far as giving goes. People there don't have a lot of margin, so they don't give a lot.
It's cost of living. It's
Cost of
crazy.
living is crazy, right? And so, like, to even speak to them about finances, which is actually part of like the message I'm talking about this weekend, is, people get a lot more offended when you talk about money out there, because money is so precious to them, because their mortgage is this much, we pay that much for gas. All of that stuff is, although we get cheaper avocados and than you guys,
man.
avocados, you know what I'm saying, guacamole. So, and there is a very, like, woven within the fabric of who most people are is a liberal ideology, and it comes out in different ways, and you see a lot of people of faith that will still hold on to those things. So the whole idea of like only 6% of Christians have a biblical worldview, well, then now shift that into California. And what was really interesting is through the whole pandemic, like we launched our church January 2020, met for 8 weeks, and then had to shut down. Then we were able to meet outside. Glory to God, San Diego is awesome. But I would have people on both sides of the spectrum of whatever it was the issue was, whether it was mask, no mask, whether it was Black Lives Matter, or all that different stuff. People would come up to me and they would thank me for the message, because they heard what they wanted to hear from me. Does that make sense? So, like, from like radical Democrat to radical Republican, and both going like, man, that was just a great word. Thanks, bro. And so, it was like this, because that was what they wanted to hear. And the interesting thing is that, that is spread out all over the place. Southern California has its pockets of Bible Belt. Orange County, because of the Jesus movement, is, and also because it's incredibly wealthy, very, like, that's like the little Republican Bible Belt. And there's also like where you get like kind of like down home farmers in California through like the Central Valley, is that's like another Bible Belt. But where we're at, only 10% of the population is churched, if that. And of that 10%, they include Protestants, Catholics, Mormons, anyone that would go to a church. And anyone that goes to a church typically is only at church once, maybe once a month. Like, there's people in our city, I love them, and it's awesome, but they maybe come every few months, but Rhythm is their church. You ask them where they go to church, they go to Rhythm Church. But once every 3 months, if that.
Yeah. California has the highest percentage of like LGBT population.
Yeah.
And so how do you guys deal with that at your church?
We teach on it, when it comes through. Like, I don't do a lot of topical for the most part. I will every once in a while. But if it's a part of the text, we'll call it out. Or, for instance, so 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago, I forget, whatever it was, or whenever this podcast happens, maybe it was months ago, but we're going through Acts right now. And there's the passage, Acts, I think it's 9, where, it's 9, where Peter gets the vision, the sheet falls, and he says, don't call anything unclean that I've called clean. Well, for the LGBTQIA community, that's one of their main passages that they use to say, see, we're now made clean. Anything that was unclean, so we can live a homosexual lifestyle, and it's considered blessed now by God. And so that and the other verse out of Galatians, right? Because those are linked as far as in there, and it goes into like what was happening in the church at that time as far as different ethnicities not liking different ethnicities, and Jewish people not liking the Gentiles, and so on and so forth, right? But that's the other one that they'll use too, that says, see, it's actually taking away the whole like male and female. Now there's not like you can be anything. And so teaching through it, I didn't have to necessarily address it because what I was teaching them, but I took time just to say, hey, just so you know, like these two verses, this is what they really mean. And if you're ever hearing from any person or pastor with a progressive theology, this is what they're going to say they mean. And here's why they don't.
Yep.
So I just hit that within there, and then I moved on. So, yeah. And we've had people leave our church because of our views on that, for sure. Because we believe in a traditional, biblical sexual ethic of, one man, one woman marriage. We've had families leave. We've had people show up with their, with their significant other and say, hey, are you guys cool with this? And I'm saying, well, you can attend here. I'll say that you guys can attend here, but that we're going to disagree radically on what this means for you. And yes, we've had some family leave. We've had people very close to me, that won't call Rhythm Church their church anymore. They'll attend every once in a while, but it's not their church. Or, yeah, it's definitely, it's a topic out there.
What advice would you give to pastors that want to have a strong biblical worldview and stance on that, but it's hard seeing people leave their church because of it?
It's hard to see people leave. Like that hurts, but that doesn't mean that we bend scripture to our feelings. It doesn't mean that we bend scripture in order to, quote unquote, love somebody, through it. I think that again, it's coming back to that thing of God's holy. What he says is real. And I think one of the things that we have to do as pastors is we can't live and die on people's opinions of us, because a lot of us do, because most pastors are people pleasers. We got into this business because of the Lord, but ultimately we like the affection of people. Such a great message, pastor. We love our pastor, but we can't bend to opinion. We have to stay strong to scripture. And I mean, ultimately, like, he's the authority. We're going to stand before him one day, and that's what matters. And so I would say 1, stay strong; 2, stay biblical; 3, I think not telling them the truth is more hurtful and harmful in the long run than bending to what it is that they would want to hear. Yeah.
It's fair.
Yeah.
It's fair.
You think churches could also provide other resources to take people, you said top of funnel earlier, but to take people that layer deeper like we do with different courses that we offer, where it's not just like, hey, we're just gonna, you got 30 minutes with them a week, and maybe they'll go to life group,
Right.
But like, let's take them a layer deeper to teach them on biblical worldview, to teach them on theology, apologetics. Do you think church could benefit from that?
I think so. But I also think too, like, so we have people, a part of that community, that have come to, that stayed at our church, that live a celibate lifestyle, that have decided that this is what they're doing, or they're wrestling through it. They're dealing with different issues, and they fall sometimes and stuff. But I think you teach your congregation how to learn, or how to know the Lord more, how to read your Bible, by how you teach the Bible. And so I do my best as far as, like, so we don't have like a lot of like of those other, we don't have a lot of those other like, we have other classes and stuff. We have classes and stuff. So I think it would be good, but I think also pastors really should get back to teaching the word, as opposed to telling a story. We have way too many storytellers out there now. We have way too many people that want to, like, comedy's great. I make people laugh. I love it.
I feel like this whole conversation just came full circle. Now you're doing the celebrity pastor call out video. Come on, somebody.
But we do. I mean, we've got. I mean, there's
He's
like
just not naming names, but I know everyone you're talking about.
Yeah. So yeah, there's a lot of storytellers out there, and so you're telling everybody that your faith is a story. Which I mean, we have our testimony, which is our story, but yeah, like when you explain what this passage means and how you got there to teach it, people go, oh, that's how I should look up the Greek of that word. I should care about this. I should understand the context. Oh, there's a history to this. It's not just, let me just pull this one, passage out and tell a story about it. Tell my own story about it. Tell a funny thing about it. Tell my little anecdote, and then come to Jesus.
Let me just add something to that. Not to that, because that was great. But my wife, I probably shouldn't say this. My wife leads a women's group at Rhythm, and one of the things she pointed out was there was a lady that came to faith, not much of a faith background at all, like randomly came to faith in this very unorthodox time. But she's there, and there's a lot of detangling that has to happen. And so my wife commended the rest of the group because there were other women in the group well equipped to handle her apologetics questions.
Oh, that's great.
Right. So it was like the group shepherded this lady. And I met this lady, and she was a sweetheart, but boy, was she a handful, And I was like, oh gosh, like you're it's not that you're not churched, like your entire worldview is incoherent right now. And there's all this cognitive dissonance as you're coming to Jesus. You got these other things that need to be detangled. And the group there was able to deal, and there was other women that was like, oh yeah, this woman like really knew her apologetics and da. My wife's not like a debater. She's not gonna she'll love this lady and do life with her, but she's not gonna debate her. And so when we had her over, it was really cool to see, because you've taught people how to learn, that the women were able to shepherd this new convert in worldview, in polemics, in theology, and apologetics.
That's rad.
Yeah, I mean that's just discipleship.
Yeah,
right?
Basically, yeah. Yep.
And so I love that you guys do that. It sounds like you do a great job at that. Another thing that you guys do really well at Rhythm is social media. Ruslan said earlier, you guys are on the cutting edge of social media. Why don't you explain to people what it is you think you guys do differently in that regards?
I think that we don't try to copy other churches. I think right now, if you look at the landscape, I mean, not just right now, for the past few decades, like the church has become so inbred when it comes to creativity. Am I gonna get?
We're inbred. It's hilarious.
I mean, it is like we're which I think one of the things that we do is that I myself am I hate status quo. I love creativity, art, music, all that stuff, film, and then I've surrounded myself with people that are creative. So it isn't even necessarily like, the way that we, take our pictures is this way, or the way that we post is this way. We just have people that we have a whole creative team. One of my first hires was a creative pastor, George Coltrane. Shout out George. That guy's phenomenal.
George, yeah.
Like talking about pastoring influencers. It's like, I have so many incredibly talented people around me. Like George is being flown out because he directed a film, like he's at a movie spot. Like, so, I think just having that team of people that do have a creative eye and do think about things differently. And so now I used to speak into it a lot, and I don't speak into it a ton anymore. But we take risks. Sometimes they hit, sometimes they don't. We're not just trying to go status quo, and we're not trying to be a megaphone. We're really trying to use social media where it's meant for it to be social, right? To be interactive, to connect with people, not just, hey, come to our event, but we look at it as a way to disciple our people in a lot of ways too. Like, it's a great tool to disciple people and to connect with them throughout the week and everything. Because I mean, ultimately, like when we throw out a sermon clip, it's because it's a reminder of the sermon that they listen to, as opposed to we're trying to go viral. I think we're not trying to go viral. We're trying to pastor and to reach our community. I think that helps.
How do you tactically use social media to actually have your church be social with people?
Do we tactfully? Not tactfully, tactically? How do we do that?
So, like,
I got you.
Actual example,
an
like
actual example.
You're like, Brady, I've trained people to do this. So I don't even have to think about it.
Yeah,
Make me
bro,
think
I
about
just,
it.
I just kick back now and, man, I don't know if this answers your thing, but, so we've trained, like, are you talking about just training our team or training like
I'm
our
actually doing a
congregation?
disservice to what you said, because you just said you guys don't copy other people, and I'm
Right.
trying to give examples for people to copy from you.
Oh,
So
okay. No, so for instance, so we actually we did this thing for Easter where I don't know whose idea it was, but it was like you'll never guess where they hid the body, and it was a QR code, and
It's fire, bro.
it was that thing actually went like nuts. It went viral, and then churches started copying it. But it was like but we had like over like 600 people actually click the QR code. And it was an Easter ad for us, and we actually did a few of those and just hit them all over put them all over the city, and made a reel of people going up and just filming it, clicking it. So that's one, I guess you could say, one example.
Because it's also a creative way to then invite people to Easter's to share a reel.
Yeah, to share
on
that reel with them.
And then that creates connection, because now I could send someone that reel, which gets people to church.
yeah, it creates an opportunity for you to.
And we have a lot of like people that they just share content. They just share our stuff because we create quality content that is shareable.
I would add to that, like, as a creative person who is publicly influential, I love having a church that I can take said content. It looks good, and it's like, oh, not only am I proud to share this content, but I'm proud when people show up on a Sunday morning to check out Rhythm Church, because it's like it's a through line. It's consistent. It's the representation to the presence online to what they're going to experience on a Sunday. It's like, I feel great about it as someone that's creative. And
we don't like, a lot of churches overpromise and underdeliver. Like, you look at their social and you think, oh, it's going to be like this, and you go to their church and you're like, it's not like that. So we don't, like, we're, buzzword authentic. We're authentic. We don't lie, on our socials. And so I think that helps too. But also for the common pastor, for like the majority of pastors, a lot of them aren't super creative necessarily, and so it would be for them to empower whoever is, and for them to trust that they can do it. I do have that bent, and I like to speak into it. But I was on YouTube, 15 years ago with Think International, doing stuff like this before stuff like this was happening. And I've always been kind of, like, it's easy for me to be on camera, so I can hop on and make a reel pretty easy, or adapt real quickly to, figuring out how to edit something really, so I still will have a hand in some of that. But I think it's just like finding creative people and empowering them. And then I think also, if you listen to feedback, if you can get some feedback from your congregation or from maybe some of your young adults or whatnot, they're like, why don't you share our content? That's a great question. Hey, why don't, hey, I noticed this sermon clip didn't get any shares. Why? Hey, I noticed this post we did, no one commented. Why? And hearing from the people like, yeah, because we don't like it, or it was weird, or it's, there's a cringe factor, or whatever the Gen Z lingo is.
Ruslan, you're literally a creator. Like, this is what you do for a living, is creating content. What have you learned? What advice could you give to pastors out there using social media, using the internet to reach people?
I think the best advice is to lean into the tension in the conversation that's happening. I think trying to be too curated, too PC, whether you're avoiding conversations or avoiding topics or avoiding coming off in a way that's unflattering, I think that's probably the best disservice pastors, the biggest disservice pastors do to themselves. They try to come off too curated and too cookie cutter, and you miss everybody, because you're going. And I'm not saying like be extreme. I'm not saying be hyper polarizing either, but lean into the tension in the conversation from a macro standpoint, and then in the details, and again, there's lots of pastors. Like, I don't think, like, again, not to keep going back to Josh Howerton, but like, I don't know if Josh Howerton is like a YouTuber per se, but he uses Instagram very well.
Yeah.
Right on his phone, in his car, post up some stuff. Sometimes he'll use slides. Sometimes he'll take his X things is his X posts and put them on Instagram, and those crush, right? And so like I think, but he's able to lean into the tension. He's not afraid to lean into the tension, and I think that's a huge aspect of it. It's like you got to be willing to lean into the tension because there's a conversation that happens around it.
That's what people want to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
Can I add to that though too? I don't think every pastor should be on it, because then you end up getting weird copycats or whatnot. If it's just not your natural, if it's not a natural platform for you, you should either you shouldn't do it, or maybe get somebody to do it for you, but you might not be on it. Like you listen again, Josh Howerton. I mean, that guy's country smooth, bro, and he's smart and he's sharp and he's he comes like he can hold a phone and make a reel, and not every guy can.
I feel like one take him too. Is he one take him?
He might one take. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean, like, or I'm trying to think of other pastors and stuff that like crush on social media, but like a Jeremy Johnson, Fearless Church. He's great, super good on that stuff. So I think but not every guy's going to come across like that. Not everyone should,
Yeah.
So
know your strengths.
Know your strengths, man.
Play to
Lean
your
into 'em.
strengths. Yeah, I think that's a problem that is even deeper in church culture, to where churches feel like they want to do everything.
Yeah.
Especially like we work with a lot of church planters. Like they just start day one launch, and yeah, we're doing Sundays, but we got to start a student ministry. And okay, now we need this. We need a women's ministry. Or like anyone in the church is like, I think we need this, pastor.
Yeah.
Everything we need this. Like, all right, we're gonna do this, and then they try to do everything. Regardless of what you think of him, Steve Jobs is really smart dude. I wouldn't take parenting advice or marriage advice from him.
Sure, yeah, no.
But
yeah.
one of the things he says that I love is focus is just saying no to good ideas.
It's good.
That's great. Yeah.
Saying no to good ideas.
Yeah.
And I think it's easy for churches and pastors to easily become a jack of all trades, trying to do everything, whether it's creating content on social media, whenever, hey, it's one thing for your church to have an account and be active on it. It's another, like, for you as a pastor, do you really need to lean into that? Or it's like, hey, we can reach people in other ways. That might not be a strength of yours, but maybe you're great at discipleship. Lean into that, or whatever the aspect might be.
Right. No, exactly. Know your strengths and rock them.
Gentlemen, this was great. Thank you so much for taking the time to come down here.
Hey, man.
You
Thanks
bet.
for having
Cheers.
us.
Yeah,
This
thanks
was
for
great.
having us. This is awesome.
I think it's the first time we've been in a setting.